Hello, and welcome to another episode of Accounting Insiders Podcast. My name is Gary Dehart, and I am the publisher of Insightful Accountant, Tax Practice News, and the host of Accounting Insiders. Today, my guest is Isaac Keller, who is the CEO of Trullion. Trullion is, and I have to read it off my paper here, an AI-powered platform that automates manual work for finance and audit teams. So welcome, Isaac. Thanks for taking some time out of your day.
Thanks, Gary. Good to see you.
Good to be seen.
Yeah.
And so kind of prior to this, we're talking about, okay, what are we going to talk about? So I do have a list of questions. So if you're watching this, sorry, I do have to look down and read my questions, or I'll forget half of them. And then we'll only have like a 3-minute interview, and that wouldn't be any good. So we're going to kick this off. So tell me just a little bit about your background, Isaac, and then how you ended up founding, because I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and saw that this was kind of a side gig, I guess, with a different name. And then, but so how did you end up founding Trullion, and is there a meaning in the name?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, Trullion stands for truth in millions, and that's the mission. You know, what good is a million or a billion or a number unless it's rooted in truth and accuracy? And it ties back to a lot of my experiences, my career. So first of all, I'm from Texas. I'm actually calling from Israel today. You know, half of our team is based here, product and many other areas are here, and I'm from Texas, right? And, you know, it started when I was in internal finance and accounting teams at growing companies, going back to Dallas, Texas, and I ran into a lot of massive accounting and finance challenges and overhauls, like revenue recognition and lease accounting. And what I found was when GAAP and accounting standards came in, they sounded really good and they provided more transparency on paper, but when it actually came time to implement them at the company, whether it was a small business or a big public company, they created a lot of work, whether it was reading a bunch of PDFs or dealing with new spreadsheets and roles. And also the GLs, right, the ERPs, were not suitable. You know, we're not flexible enough to build those applications. So obviously, having a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, I decided to do something about it. You know, I had started to play with AI in a very user-friendly way, and I thought that'd be great if we could leverage AI to bring the contracts together, to bring the CRMs and the systems together, and then build these flexible workflows for accounting where, you know, an accounting team could just focus on the judgments and the strategic layer. So that was the initial promise of Trullion. As a company, you know, I decided, I was living in New York at the time, to partner with my partner Amir Boldo in Israel to really build a world-class tech organization, and then obviously have a U.S. American facing business, but really a global company that serves GAAP, IFRS, and all different types of businesses. So that's where we are today. We're about 50 people, over 1,000 customers, a lot of accounting firm partners, a lot of audit firms, advisory firm partners, and we're just trying to make, bring more truth to this sector.
Yeah, so pretty amazing how many how much technology comes out of Israel, and
right,
it has for many, many years, right? Stuff that you would never see. I used to work on a textile magazine back in the early 90s. And there was a company that was, you know, out of Israel. I can't even remember what it was, but it was like kind of looking at, I think they were looking at kind of the fabric as it was being woven, and, you know, using technology to stop the process if there was a problem. I think I've got the right company, but
yeah.
How did you end up connecting with your business partner?
Through investors.
Okay.
So I was a bit of an outsider when I came to Israel. I had read a book called Startup Nation, which is kind of a famous book right now, that talked about, you know, the pace of innovation and really the global mindset of Israeli entrepreneurs. It also talked about how the military background was very strong, you know, for them. It talked about how Israeli companies built for the world instead of just building for the country, right? Because they have kind of a global mindset. But when I came to Israel, it was hard coming in as an outsider. I had a work visa. And it wasn't until I met our investors, who were Americans who had been investing in Israel, who they introduced me to my partner. So Amir, my co-founder, had been in one of the most elite Israeli intelligence units and had been working at many high growth companies. One got sold to HP, last year, and it was just it was a great connection. I mean, I don't know if anyone's watching, like, or if they're just on audio, but I kind of have a collared shirt. I try to dress nice. I work for private equity backed firms and finance and accounting and stuff. My partner Amir, came from the military, worked for startups, t-shirt, jeans every day, Diet Coke or Coke Zero in his hand.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the combination of the business. I like to bring the polish, the accounting, the finance, and Amir is an incredible, fast, innovative leader. And so that's really permeated our culture at Trullion.
Yeah. And did you say half are in New York, half in Israel? It's kind of split.
Yeah, more than half are in Israel, but
Yeah.
we're growing and continuing to grow in New York. And that's just part of a life cycle of a tech company these days, right? You hire a lot of product and engineering early, and then as you start to scale, which we've kind of hit that now, you start to hire a lot more sales, marketing. We have a lot of partnerships, so we have channel partners and stuff like that, and customer success, right? A lot of those hires are in the US. We got an office in New York.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me a little. So we talked about your background a little bit. So AI obviously is getting a whole lot of attention right now with the Chat GPT and what it's doing. So let's talk a little bit about AI in the short term, 1 to 5 years, let's say. Where do you think it will be generally, like general purpose, and then also look at kind of our market, the tax and accounting, finance, and then tie in kind of long term. I know I just threw a lot at you.
No, it's great. It's great.
But
No, that's perfect. And by the way, now's the time, right? Now's the time to be talking about it, especially with Chat GPT 3. But let's put it in context, right? I would say there's been 3 super, generational eras within accounting. The first is pretty simple, just going back to the invention of the relational database, right? Accounting, accountants and accounting firms were the pioneers in adopting things like Intuit, Oracle, SAP in the early days, right? Just moving into a database. That was a big breakthrough, and it makes a lot of sense in retrospect for debits and credits and, a balance sheet. That's the first era. I would say the second era is really the cloud revolution, right? And so when you took databases and moved them to the cloud, because the accounting industry is highly services oriented, right? So you could have a one-to-many client relationship. You guys could be down the street or maybe another state from each other. Now cloud allowed people to basically scale faster. It allowed small, medium-sized businesses and firms to leverage these tools in a more cost-effective way. And so that was like a second huge, I think, revolution. The third is AI, right? It's really having that kind of impact. Now, the reason we're not feeling it right now is because it's still in an early adopter phase. And what Chat GPT did is it didn't like the AI is not that much different. I think it just made people realize how accessible and how powerful this is going to be, right? That was the big thing with Chat GPT, right? A lot of our models are close to where Chat GPT is within the accounting sector. But I think people realize, well, my teenager can now chat with a bot that feels real, and my college student kid can write a term paper, or actually not write it, just put it in Chat GPT. So that's the idea, is it made it really applicable. Okay, so what does that mean? So first of all, like zooming out, we know what it means in other industries. Autonomous vehicles and driving is the perfect example. It starts with small use cases. So lane assist, making sure that you don't knock into a car that's beside you and just giving you a little beep, right? It goes into helping you park, right? And maybe even jerking the brake a little bit. Then it starts to go into cruise control, where you could actually, my friend like lifts his hands and says, look, it's autonomous driving, right? And, one day it could end up in autonomous driving, right? But that's kind of the progression of how these things work. So as it relates to the accounting industry, I'll point to just maybe a couple of use cases, right? Number one, I think there's going to be massive innovation around data collection and data intake, okay? A lot of accounting data is entered manually. It sounds obvious to us, but you're typing in things that you read in a contract or an invoice or a bank statement, okay? That is going to be heavily automated with AI. You know, it's already started and it's going to be accelerated over the next couple of years. Another thing will be anomaly detection. Sorry, let me just back up. The data intake is going to be a lot around NLP, which is natural language processing, which is much closer to what ChatGPT does, right? Which is understanding language and even intent, right? The other areas of AI might just be around massive data sets. So you think about anomaly detection, right? Looking at a GL, looking at a QuickBooks, looking at a high volume of transaction and trying to decide which are errors, which are fraudulent, even internally. Hey, that vendor, canceled or that vendor is popping up more than it should, right? Because we're usually on monthly contracts, whatever it is, right? So the big data sets will enable AI to come up with more anomaly detection. So those are just two use cases. There's tons, but obviously that's going to have an impact, not just on your average, corporate controller and audited firm, which has a lot of money and data at stake, but also, small businesses, right? And the individual accountant.
Do you see leveraging AI? How do you, because there certainly is value in kind of doing the work, right? We're talking,
right.
I think before we started, or, the green eye shade kind of thing, but, there's value in doing that work and sharpening your skills, so to speak, in doing that work. And I don't know a lot about audit, but it seems like that would be the case with audit. So if you start automating a lot of that front end, just roll up your sleeves type of work, does that impact kind of the knowledge base of the people who are managing that process?
I think it's a really good question, and we don't have a clear answer because it's the future. Right. But maybe we'll use our car analogy, right? I saw someone with their new car, the car parallel parked itself, right? And I'm thinking to myself, well, when I took my driving test, man, I was the best parallel parker ever. And you kind of like say to yourself, well, I wish they knew how to park, but maybe they don't need it. Maybe parallel parking is not a powerful skill. Like maybe it's something that should be left to the car. I don't know. I don't know the answer. And so I think the same thing will apply for accounting, right? Yeah, it's really, really valuable to be able to understand a specific contract or financing agreement or invoice. But maybe that can be automated, and there's other areas where you could focus on that are more strategic or more interesting, or understanding like a cross-border tax implication, right? Something like that. Another way to think about it is that there will be new aspects of accounting and audit that are much more related to the judgment and the complexity layer that people are now going to spend more time doing, right? Mm-hmm. I'll just use one example. Like in auditing, and I'll talk about like regional firms. We work with a lot of regional firms. They have a lot of pressure on them, right? Because of talent and availability and things like that. But at the same time, to perform a good audit, they rely on sampling. And the more pressure they have, the more that quality goes down because they sample less, or they have more workflows to sample because there's new, rules around R&D tax or whatever it is, right? And so maybe AI could bridge that gap and allow them to collect all the data in one place and help them kind of zoom in on the areas that they should focus on, right? And so then the next generation of auditors may not know how to run a sampling process, but they may be able to know how to find, the really big errors in much bigger pools of data. I'm hypothesizing. We don't know how it's going to go, right?
Well, the car analogy. So we have one car in the family that's a straight drive, and that's my youngest son, and he and I are the only ones that can drive it. My wife doesn't know how to drive it, and my older son doesn't know how to drive it. And now he refuses to learn how to drive it because he doesn't want his younger brother to teach him how to do something. So
Those are the real problems we have to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what about in that long term, like 5 plus 10 years? I mean, you know, I'm not on the inside of AI, but I certainly don't think it's the Terminator out there, but it is certainly, it should be making our lives better, right?
Yeah, definitely to some extent. And obviously there's definitely challenges around AI and ethics and bias in all those areas. I don't know if those have crept into accounting
Mhm.
as much as AI applications for social situations and things like that. 5 to 10 years and beyond. So first of all, there is a lot of demand and kind of criticality of the accounting profession. Like it is the backbone of business, into both individual and personal accounting. It's the backbone of, tax collection, which is a government,
Right.
lifeline, right? So all these things go back to something that's very, very important. And I think that's important for us to keep in mind because all of the money and dollars that's exchanged in this industry, it's not going away, right? It's critical infrastructure. And so what that means is when AI comes in, it's going to kind of look for areas to improve, to automate, to reduce cost, to optimize, to improve efficiency. Now, what does it look like 5 to 10 years? Let me give you a couple theories, right? So let's talk about small, medium-sized business, both accountants and audit firms. If you think about it, GAAP is a pretty powerful code, right? GAAP accounting and IFRS accounting. But obviously a lot of small businesses operate on a cash basis. Well, maybe there's value in valuing their data based on revenue rules, like under GAAP, right? I don't know, but I'm just saying like all these GAAP rules that we spend a lot of time debating to try to get better pictures of businesses for banks and for auditors and for investors and stuff. Once those get infused into technology powered by AI and all of the automation features, then those powerful features can come more and more down to the small, medium business accountants. So I would call it something like big four superpowers. Like why is some of those tools and capabilities not more democratized all the way down to small, medium-sized businesses, right? That's one area, right? So bringing powerful accounting judgment into all types of shapes and sizes. Another thing to think about is the nature of audit, right? Audit sits on like the other side of the wall or the other side of the GL from their client, right?
Mhm.
It happens once a year, and you kind of get the list, and yeah, we're good, and like I think it's lost a little bit of its luster and its power over the year. Well, what if an accounting, what if a internal accounting team, so a company, could just dump their data into like a file drive where the AI can actually sift through all of the documents and all of the CRM and all of the billing and get a full picture of what that company is and what are the risks and what are the flags. And then the auditor could actually come into that very system and do their analysis, and that both parties could rely upon the system with everything in one place, meaning a fully connected audit trail that says, hey, I'm going to look at this journal entry, and then it's going to swim all the way back to a bank confirmation. That's going to be completely connected at an on-demand click. I think that could be very, very powerful for the kind of higher end of the accounting and audit profession.
Yeah, years ago, I had lunch with, Brian Fox. Do you know Brian Fox
Yeah,
from?
it's at confirmation.com. Yeah.
Yeah, like years ago. I used to work for Accounting Today,
Yep.
and so met with him in Nashville, and he was kind of sharing how he kind of came up with, or how confirmation.com, came into being, which is, again, being on the outside, not an accountant, but pretty insane, the hole that was there in the process that he was able to cut,
Yeah.
right? I
It's
mean,
unbelievable. And by the way, and I don't know Brian personally, but he's a fantastic entrepreneur. And that's one of the better examples of an exit, of a liquidity event for an accounting software. And they were doing, for the most part, one thing,
right.
right? One thing, right? So if you could imagine right? If you could build a business off of one aspect of the audit, how much more opportunity there is,
Absolutely.
right?
Makes you smile. If you're not with people, if you don't see the video, he's very happy about all the opportunity out there.
Well, I'm a happy guy in general. I get excited, and
Yeah,
and I can
that is
I can
exciting.
tell you that our clients are really excited. I mean, especially we're talking about, regional audit firms, right? This could be it could be a 10-person firm, right? It could be a 10-person firm, or it could be a 500-person firm. We have the big four starting to play around, right? These firms are excited, right? They have innovation committees. They're starting to think about the future of audit. It's amazing.
And I saw something you had posted on LinkedIn, I think within the past week or so ago, that right now I see a lot on Twitter and on LinkedIn, people talking about the 150 hours and people talking about just the gap in talent, right? So I imagine that talent gap also, I mean, you're able to fill the bottom end of that. It's not really a funnel, but we'll call it the bottom end of that funnel, right? People that are having to do, in there with the 10 keys doing their thing. If you can replace some of that work, then that takes some of the pressure or the burden off of the talent gap, it would seem to me, for firms. Because
Yeah,
now,
definitely. Yeah.
I was going to say, don't have to have as many people going to an accountant site or going to an account site or remote work, however it's best done. Because I can let your software, your technology do that work and bring in people, one step above in the process. So it may not need as many.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, it's definitely good for us, right? When firms or teams are crunched, it's tight. They do look at software. They are more open to looking at software. But that's not, in our world, like we're happy if there's more accountants, right? Meaning it's one thing to be a cost savings and automation and compliance play, right? That definitely sells for us. But what's really exciting is when the team or the firm unlocks new value, right? It creates a new way of auditing that's faster, different, better, right? And what's even more exciting is when you have the young auditors in that firm start to play around with that tool, it's a lot different than the other things they've been taking, because historically there's been a lot of legacy players in this space and there hasn't been that much innovation, probably partially because there hasn't been that much openness, right? And so in our perfect world, number one, we'll stabilize. We'll help these firms bridge the gap with really strong AI and automation tools. But number two, there should be some prestige built back up around the accounting and audit industry, right? We're talking about really, really sharp quantitative people that have dedicated their careers to, ongoing education and everything. And really the minds that powered into it, and the early Oracles and SAP's use cases of the world. So I think we'd like to see things turn around in the near future too.
Sure. So let me ask you this. So you mentioned kind of 10-person firm up to your massive firm.
Yeah.
Is that a number that you guys work around, or is that just a number you pulled out of the air?
That's a stretch. We do have firms with 10 to 20 people that have reached out to us, and if they have the budget and they want to scale, they work with us. It is an enterprise grade software with high touch support. So that's just our business model. I will say there's a lot of fractional CFOs and controllers that have reached out and scaled with us. So that's great. But really our sweet spot, I mean, if you look at the types of firms, so let's just talk about firms. You're talking about an Armanino, a Mazars, a CBIZ MHM, right? These really strong tech forward top 100 firms. And then, obviously we've got a lot in the top 400, 300, 200 sprinkled in.
Okay. So let's roll up our sleeves and talk about product and what Trullion actually does. And we don't have to look at, the ones and zeros, but, because on the site, again, it's on my other there, you talk about workflow and you talk about automations. Workflow for me means one thing because I'm not in audit, but talk a little bit about that, about the product itself. So when an accounting firm has an audit that they have to do, where are you being leveraged and how is it being leveraged?
Okay, got it. So let me back up for a second, because Trullion's very unique in that we can sell to both sides of the accounting equation, meaning we
Okay.
do sell to CFOs and corporate controllers. That's our core business. But then we also offer a product for their auditors, right?
Okay.
And sometimes the auditors use it independently of that CFO controller, right? And just use our tool. Sometimes the CFOs and controllers use it independently of their auditors. And then sometimes we've got both the controller and the auditor using Trullion together. Okay, how does it start? It starts like this. You got a gap. As a company, as a corporate, as a small business, you've got a gap. That gap sits somewhere between, let's call it your Dropbox or CRM, which I'm going to call source data, and your GL. Okay, and that's a gap. And what do you got to fill? Probably a new standard, right? Or a new workflow. Whether now you got to do something, I don't know, around equity, just throwing something out there. With us, we identified revenue recognition. So there's a massive overhaul in the past few years, and lease accounting, which is now coming into play for private companies. Those two workflows were unaddressed in that gap between the source data and the ERP. So what we built is a bridge to fill that gap. And that bridge has two main components. The first component is an AI-powered data ingestion platform, which means it can take PDFs, CRM data, bring it together in one place and help automate that manual data extraction. That's the first part. The second part is what you talked about, which is the workflow. The workflow is the rules engine, right? It's, hey, now you've got to convert your lease data, which is cleansed and nice and all there, into a right of use asset. That's the new standards. It's saying your lease is not an expense. It's actually now a balance sheet activity, right? And so our software helps automate that process to get you to the debit and credit, to get you to a disclosure. Now, you as an accountant answer several questions. You make judgments about the nature of the lease or the revenue item, of course, but that's all done within a workflow. So once you take 1 and 2 together, something really cool happens in the accounting industry. The auditor, who traditionally samples out of the GL, calls their client and says, well, wait a minute, what's this Trullion tool that you're using? Like, well, that's our subledger here. Well, can I get access to that? And they say, sure. And they go into the tool and they say, well, wait a minute. This has all your source documentation, all of the audit trail and what you did, and all the journal entries, which you generally don't see till they hit the GL, the ERP. And so that's how we open it up to the auditors, because the auditors immediately started seeing that there's much broader data in here. It's all connected together back to the source documentation. And I'm going to get more confident and comfortable if I can go through this. So let's call it a 1 + 1 = 3 equation, right? When you brought the source data and you added the automation, the workflows, that allowed the auditor to come in and feel more confident. So we opened it up as a platform. It was originally just an automation subledger, and now it's become a platform for both sides.
And you work with what other technologies? I know what I see, NetSuite.
Yeah, definitely. So look, the truth is we have a lot of QuickBooks customers, and I say that in case there's QuickBooks listening,
Sure.
but the truth is I would call it NetSuite and up is our sweet spot, right?
Okay.
We do have a lot of Sage and Microsoft Dynamics customers, but we also have massive global customers who are on SAP or Oracle or Workday or Infor. To be honest, we support just about every GL package. So revenue's revenue, leases are leases, and if we can help, we're happy to talk.
Okay, and then so that's products. So let's talk about services. So you mentioned, I think you have people in both in New York and in Israel. Or is that the customer services there? So I'm using your tool. I have a problem. Am I chatting with somebody? Am I on the phone with somebody? What's that look like?
Yeah, we have both. One very important thing to understand is we're not a services company, right? We're a software company. And so what that means is we intentionally try to build and scale as much as we can in the software. And what it also means is we really focus on our partners who are services experts, right? And so if you look at a lot of our customers, they've purchased Trullion either through or on the recommendation of their service provider, whether it's a fractional accountant or controller or an advisory firm who's helping them do a digital transformation. So I feel like, zooming out, they act a lot of times as our customer support, and those are their clients more so than they're ours. We've got a few people in customer success. They do a fantastic job, right? But half of their job is making sure our partners happy, who really know their clients better than we do.
Right. Okay. All right. So then, so what is that go-to-market strategy? What does that look like? Is it where do you guys spend most of your time? Because I think you said you kind of built out, you've added customer service, you've added, the business development people. So
Yeah,
what's that go-to-market strategy?
definitely. I think the easiest, I'll oversimplify it. It's 50-50. 50% of our business comes from traditional online search, LinkedIn, Google, that type of stuff. 50% of our business comes from our partner firms. It could be audit or advisory firms, right? That's it. We really, it's very, and that symbiosis is very important, because we really want the companies to pull and demand our product and make sure that we've got product market fit, so that when the service provider is recommending us, they know that their end client is going to be very, very happy. So we have to balance that very, very well to continue to improve our tool.
Gotcha. And then, do you go to trade shows, or are you at like the NetSuite?
Yeah, for sure. I think, we haven't been to Suite World, but I would say the best place to find us, AICP Engage, AICP Engage, we had a big booth last year. We'll be there again this year. We go to a lot of regional events. We work closely with, Prime Global and AGN and BDO Alliance, and many others. So we go to a lot of those regional events. We're definitely out there, and we're also hosting a lot of our own events this year for CFOs and controllers in major cities.
Okay, those are face-to-face.
Oh, we're face-to-face. In fact, I didn't mention this. We're an in-office culture.
Okay.
We have a Tel Aviv and a New York office. We come to work every day. We have a great time. We've got a great culture, and a big part of our DNA is a group of people that likes coming into the office and likes working together.
Are you do you get involved in hiring? Or have you been able to pass that on to somebody else?
I try to help where they let me.
Yeah.
We have a great head of HR out of Tel Aviv, who works both in our New York and Tel Aviv offices. She's fantastic and has a team. And if they ask for my opinion, I try to help.
Yeah. And because I'm wondering just what the feedback is about, hey, if you want to work here, you come to the office. We're at X. Here's our street address. Right. Come here. What I'm wondering.
Well, so first of all, it's definitely different, and there's a couple things. So it's different in Tel Aviv and New York. So Tel Aviv, for whatever reason, Israel, people love being in person. They love culture. They love going out to lunch together. That's a big part of the culture here. In New York, it's been different, but also it's changed over the past year. So whereas a year ago we were hiring, we put our foot down, said this is an in-office culture, and people are like, well, I've got other offers. Yeah. I think now people appreciate that. The tides have turned a little bit, so we're much more confident saying this is very important to us, and if that's not your style, that's okay, right? We understand, because culture comes first before the skills and the talents.
Yeah, and I think the biggest group of people that to me has a very negative impact on kind of the work from home. And I've worked from home for 15 years, but I've been married for 23 years, and I'm in a different age and stage of my life than somebody fresh out of school. And there's so much value in being in an office with other people, both what you're learning from your peers, what you're learning from your boss, what you learn over the cubicle walls, especially for, in my opinion, younger people. I work in my basement. I love the commute, but it sure, right. The dog doesn't talk a whole lot, and so
yeah. Well, it depends on the industry. Yeah, it depends on, and look, it's kind of funny, isn't it? We're creating a platform which leverages AI together in person, right? You know, we're figuring it out together, and we're definitely, I think, you know, taking advantage of like kind of those relationships we built over the years.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap this up because I know I'm sure you got things to do. What time is it in Tel Aviv?
Right now, 10:30, 10:15.
PM or AM?
10:15 p.m. So just a
Oh,
little bit
sure.
about, yeah, we work, you know, we work hard. We obviously, we're a US facing company. So a lot of us work US hours, and this is fun.
All right. So let's, sorry. So wrap it up. So if somebody wants, oh, what's on the roadmap? Is there anything out there? Or are you guys just saying, you know what, we do these two things incredibly
No, we've
well. We're
got,
doing it, pulling the confirmation.com and go, this is all we need to do.
no, they were much more straight lined than us to one thing. We've got leases, RevRec, and an audit platform right now. Those are 3 modules. That's more than you know, all you can eat if you're, you know, both an accounting or an audit firm.
Yeah.
And I would say, you know, get in touch with us, and we'll give you a sneak peek of the roadmap, you know, along the way.
Right. And then, and how do they do that? How would somebody get in touch with you?
Yeah, so it's Trullion.com, Trullion. It's like trillion with a U. Again, truth in millions. Request a demo. Me personally, you can reach out if you want. Isaac, ISAAC at Trullion.com. We're open. We love to talk to people who are passionate about the industry, passionate about new technology. And if you want to see a demo or check it out, you know, we're here.
Great. All right. Well, we will call that a wrap. Thank you so much, Isaac. I certainly appreciate you sharing some information with us, and I'm sure we'll be at AICP Engage walking there, so I'll definitely get to meet you face to face at that event.
That would be awesome.
So,
I'm looking
right,
forward.
well, thank you so much. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Gary.